In this video, we're going to be talking about understanding the basics of time signatures. Time signatures basically tell us how a measure is going to be divided up so that we know how each rhythm relates to the beat, which was discussed in the last video. So looking here, we have an example of a time signature. It says a 4 and a 4, one is on top of the other. This is only one time signature example. When I say this out loud, when I wanted to say the name of this time signature, I'm going to say 4-4, starting with the top number and saying the bottom number afterward. So I would say that this music is going to be in 4/4 time. It's important to know what each number represents. So let's dig into that. The top number tells us how many beats are going to be in each measure. We know that each measure is divided up by a bar line. So this bar line shown here, it's basically just showing the end of each measure and the beginning of the next one. So where this bar line is, it lets us know, hey, measure 1 is over and measure 2 is beginning. Same thing here. This one shows us that measure 2 is over and measure 3 is beginning. So between each bar line, we're going to have a consistent amount of time in between, unless we have a new time signature to tell us otherwise. So if we are in 4/4, we know that we're going to have 4 beats per measure. So right now I'm having 4 beats and I'm showing you through quarter notes. But how do we know that it's not going to just be half notes, 4 half notes in each measure, or 4 whole notes? Well, that's why we need the bottom number. The bottom number tells us 4 of what? Well, 4, let me go ahead and just define it first. So the bottom number tells us what gets the beat. What is the value of 1 beat? When we talked about why quarter notes are called quarter notes in the previous video, we talked about how if you get a whole note and divide it up into 4 equal-sized pieces, 2, 3, 4, you're going to get 4 quarter notes. And that's really important to know. So quarter notes are, we think of them like quarters and as if the whole note was $1. Okay, so we have 4 quarter notes here. That's an interesting and important thing to know because when we look over here, we see that a quarter note, or that there's a 4 on the bottom. The 4 tells us what gets the beat. We know that if we chop a whole note up into 4 pieces, we get quarter notes. Here's how this all draws together. When you have a whole note, you divide it up into 4 beats, you get quarter notes. The bottom number always tells you how much you need to divide or to chop up a whole note to get whatever gets the beat. So if I have a 4 on the bottom, that means that I'm going to have quarter notes. The quarter notes are going to get the beat, which means every time I hear that click, at least right now, every time I hear that click of that metronome, I'm going to be hearing quarter notes. Each one of these clicks is a quarter note. Okay, so the top number tells us that there's going to be 4 beats in each measure, and the bottom number, because it's a 4, tells us, oh, well, we're chopping up a whole note into 4 equal-sized pieces. What does that give us? Quarter notes. Now that we understand this, I'm going to remove this extra stuff right here. And I want to just show you a little bit more about the possibilities for time signatures. So here, the way that this first measure would be counted would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Same thing here, 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll notice that we're starting over each time. Once we get to the number 4, we can't go to 5 or anything past 4 really, unless we're counting eighth notes. We might say tase. We'll get to that later, and we touched on it briefly in the previous video. But we'll never get to the number 5 because we know there's only 4 beats in each measure. Also, if we look over here at measure 3, we have, I'm going to write a whole note as 1, and then the rest of the notes are going to be in, the rest of the beats are going to be in parentheses because there's only one note in that measure. So this whole note counts for 4 beats. Okay, and that would be an entire measure. Because only 4 quarter notes fit in each measure, and 4 quarter notes fit inside one whole note, this is a complete measure. I'm going to go ahead and jump to a couple of other possibilities for time signatures. I think I'm going to go ahead and erase this example, just to give you an idea of what other possibilities there could be. And then we'll count a couple. Okay, so if we wanted to change the time signature to 3/4, what would that mean? So, and I'm going to change it over here. So we know that the top number tells us how many beats are in each measure. We know that we're going to have 3 beats in each measure. And what kind of note is each beat going to be? Well, because there's a 4 on the bottom, that tells us what gets the beat. So that tells us there's going to be 3 quarter notes in each measure. 3 quarter notes. So if I was to write a full measure of quarter notes, I would get 1, 2, 3. And that would be exactly how we would count it. 1, 2, 3. Now if I was to count with 1 half note and 1 quarter note, like this, would that be a full measure for measure number 2? Yes. And the reason is because we know that half notes count for 2 beats in themselves. Okay, so beats 1 and 2 both fit, they both fit within this half note. And beat 3 would be represented by the quarter note at the end. We would not go all the way to beat 4 because we know that there is no beat 4. There are only 3 beats in each measure, 3 quarter notes. So we can have any combination of rhythms, but one thing we cannot have, for example, we cannot have a whole note. And the reason being, a whole note has how many beats? Well, let's review. It has 4 beats. But we know that since we are in 3/4 time, there can only be 3 beats in each measure. So that 4 shows us that this rhythm, a whole note, is too big. In other words, it's too much time. It takes too much time, has too long of a note value to fit inside a 3/4, or inside a measure of 3/4 time. So this does not work. It literally does not fit in 3/4 time because it has 4 beats, and 3/4 time signature only allows for 3 beats in each measure. The longest note value that could be in a measure of 3/4 time would be a dotted half note. We're not going to go over that in this video, but that would have 3 beats. And a dotted half note would look like this, and that would last for a full measure. Let's cover one more time signature in this video. Actually, let's go ahead and listen to me count this for you. I'm going to count you off in 3/4 time, so I'm going to give you 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, go. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1. Okay, I'll do that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1. Okay, and you'll notice that at no point did I go up to beat 4, and I also did not leave extra time there. As soon as 3 was over, I went straight to beat 1 of the following measure. Okay, now for one more example. So we are going to cover the possibility of 2/4 time. I'm going to cover a couple of special cases at the end, and I'll do that in a moment. So if we're in 2/4 time, we know that there are going to be 2 quarter notes in each measure. So what we can have here at the bottom, as an example, would be 2 quarter notes. And in measure 2, I may put a half note. And that would be a full measure in itself, because a half note has 2 beats. I'll go ahead and write in the counts in just a moment. And something we haven't covered too much in detail yet, when we can have a full measure of eighth notes, which would only be 2 beats. I'll go ahead and cover this. So there's going to be 1, 2. There is no 3 at all. Okay, and then I have 1, and beat 2 is in parentheses when we have a half note. So a half note would cover an entire bar. And then for eighth notes, we have 1, te, 2, te, and that's it. That's the end of the bar. So you see, one more time, that a whole note would not fit in 2/4 time. So if I was to write the beats that a whole note would get if it were to fit, it would have 4 beats. But we know that we can't fit 4 beats inside a 2/4 bar, inside a 2/4 measure, because it's too big. It's like trying to fit a watermelon inside your pocket. It doesn't fit because it's too big. There's too much time taken by this whole note to fit in one bar. The greatest, I'll rephrase, the longest note value that can fit in a 2/4 time signature measure could be a half note. So this is not allowed.